Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Anarchy in the streets of Portland as protesters continue their reign of terror for more than 50 days. Last night, government agents fired tear gas on the unruly mob, including the gentleman of the mayor who had gone out to support the protesters. What was he doing out in the street? And what is the action President Trump now taking to stop this and other violence in America? Here's CBN's Jenna Browder.
Portland's mayor met with protesters to rally them against the federal agents using force to protect federal buildings. But when he said he didn't support abolishing the police, the crowd booed him and called on him to resign. Later, as the crowd got out of control, federal agents fired tear gas on the crowd, including the mayor. This kind of violence taking place almost nightly in Portland. CBN contributor Chuck Holton was there earlier this week.
There's an undercurrent of tension here, and you can feel it because almost every night for the last couple of weeks, things have gotten significantly more exciting as the night wears on.
The crowd swelled after sundown, bringing another element with it. Black-clad Antifa members armed with baseball bats, high-powered lasers, and homemade shields gathered at the front of the federal building and started trying to break down boarded-up doors. Several minutes later, law enforcement officers from the U.S. Border Patrol's tactical team emerged and pushed the crowd away from the building. As the peaceful protesters quickly backed off, Antifa members in expensive gas masks began throwing bottles and trying to blind the agents with the powerful green lasers. In response, the agents fired tear gas and stun grenades.
A little bit of tear gas. That's exciting. Ooh, should have brought a mask. Oh, yeah. Goggles, things like that.
In response to growing violence in America's cities, President Trump announced he's expanding Operation Legend, sending more federal agents to cities, starting with Chicago.
In recent weeks, there's been a radical movement to defund, dismantle, and dissolve our police departments.
Trump making the announcement Wednesday at the White House.
We'll work every single day to restore public safety, protect our nation's children, and bring violent perpetrators to justice.
It comes in response to rising crime in cities across America. The president blaming their Democrat leaders. Surveillance video shows this drive-by shooting Tuesday in Chicago. At least 15 people were hurt. This year in the Windy City, more than 400 people have been murdered. That number up nearly 50% from the previous year. The mayor of Chicago says her team will work with the federal agents, but making clear they're not there to fight protesters.
So they're not federal troops. They're FBI, DEA, ATF, and they will be plugged in to the existing infrastructure of those agencies.
Meanwhile, it's not just the agents the administration is sending to cities.
This afternoon, I'm also announcing that the Department of Justice will provide more than $61 million in grants to hire hundreds of new police officers in cities that are the focus of Operation Legend.
And while the money may be more welcome than the agents, some mayors are not having it. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio says federal agents are not welcome in his city. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Well, thanks, Jenna. Ladies and gentlemen, this Antifa is an organization bent on destruction and destroying America. It has its origins in the fight against Nazi Germany. It's not an indigenous organization. And Black Lives Matter, we have pointed out the 3 women who organized that organization by that name. 2 at least said we are trained Marxist revolutionaries. This is not some indigenous movement. But the idea that they're now using lasers to blind the police, and they've got bats, and they've got stash of brickbats and things like that. I mean, it is really serious. And for the mayors to say, like de Blasio said, well, everything is just wonderful in New York, it's not wonderful. And it's revolution, and the idea is to destroy America. And we cannot allow that to happen. But the president is having a tough time because the media seems to be on the side of some of these demonstrators, and it's not very helpful. Well, in other news, grim milestones in the COVID-19 crisis. New cases keep increasing, and so do deaths. John Jessup has more.
That is right, Pat. The United States is closing in on 4 million cases, and deaths are up 12% over last week. The South setting records for fatalities 2 days in a row now, and 31 states are increasing their efforts to stop the spread, including mandates to wear masks. Meanwhile, here in Washington, D.C., lawmakers are working to pass the next round of economic relief. Senate Republicans expected to begin rolling out elements of their $1 trillion plan today. One sticking point, extending a $600 a week boost in unemployment benefits. That program is set to expire in coming days. Well, doctors and scientists are learning more about the impact of the virus on patients. We've known from the beginning that COVID-19 takes aim at the lungs, but as Lori Johnson reports, new studies show the damage goes much further.
Several medical papers document a wide range of non-respiratory problems caused by COVID-19. In some studies, up to 60% of people who've had the virus developed a neurological issue.
Everything from stroke to loss of smell, of course, loss of taste, Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a reversible paralysis syndrome, to an encephalitis that has been described as well, to various, of course, muscle pains, headaches.
Often these go away, but some, such as stroke effects, can be permanent. Doctors fear there could be other long-term health problems.
So there's a lot of ongoing speculation about whether there will be post-COVID Alzheimer's or post-COVID Parkinsonism or other phenomena we just don't know yet.
Doctors say it's clear COVID often causes blood clotting, which is particularly concerning for young people who might not realize they're having a stroke and wait too long to get help. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
So many unknowns concerning the coronavirus. Pat, back to you.
CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson is here with us. And Lori, he was originally thought, well, look, this is nothing more than a bad case of flu. But it's more serious. They've actually, as I understand, begun to do studies of the hearts of people who've died and find that the tissues of the heart and the tissues of the lungs show tremendous stress. Could you talk about some of these?
That's right, Pat. I interviewed the director of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Francis Collins. That interview is going to be aired next Tuesday on the 700 Club. And he said that this COVID-19 virus is, quote, diabolical because we've never seen anything like it before. So when it first came out, we started thinking it might be like things that are sort of like it, coronaviruses that are associated with the common cold, or SARS or MERS, but it's definitely different. And so now it's been with us about 6 months, and there are some known things about it, such as the blood clotting, which is a very serious issue. And then now you're talking about issues with the heart. I had the neurologist talking about issues with the brain, and it still remains to be seen what kind of long-term impacts there are. We saw with the Spanish flu 100 years ago, different virus, but that there were some long-term, some Parkinsonism and some other long-term issues. So it is very serious, you're right, and we should take it seriously. Regarding the blood clotting, doctors are now trying to nip that in the bud when people come in and present positive with COVID-19. Many of them are now giving low-dose heparin or other blood thinners and are advising people who are on blood thinners right now to stay on them. Now is not the time to come off. But the concern are people who don't get any medical attention. They're not having serious symptoms, and they're at risk for blood clotting. And a lot of them don't know the stroke signs, and they need to, because these young people are having strokes and waiting a day before they get help. So here are the main stroke signs. First of all, face drooping. So even if you're alone and you're feeling weird, look in the mirror. If your face is drooping, that could be a sign of a stroke. Also, arm weakness. You should be able to hold your arms out like this if one of them them drops down, that's a stroke warning sign. And also difficulty speaking, having garbled speech. Again, even if you're alone, try to say something out loud like the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you can't do that, you want to try to get to that level 1 stroke center as soon as you can, because every minute, millions of brain cells die. It's good to know right now where the level 1 stroke center is near you, because oftentimes it's not the closest hospital, and ambulances are in many places required by law to take you to the closest hospital. So this is a decision families need to make. Do you want to have someone drive you to a level 1 stroke center as opposed to not going to the ambulance route? I'm not advising that. I'm saying this needs to be a discussion ahead of time.
Well, you're exactly right. I had a minor stroke, and fortunately, my son was there, and our head of police, they rushed me immediately down to a hospital that had a stroke center, but the one closest to us didn't have anything like that. My wife was taken there initially, and before she was finished, this was a major problem. Right. But how are people going to know where a level 1 stroke center is? How are they going to find out?
It's online. It's just do a little bit of investigating in your area. You call your nearby hospitals and just ask them, are you a level 1 stroke center? This information is on the internet, and if you're not into computers, give your nearby hospitals a call. But this is legislation that is pending in states all across the country. You know, should this be a law that if an ambulance comes to your home and you're having a stroke, should they be required by law to take you to the nearest hospital, or maybe drive a little further to the level 1 stroke center? And so in places like Ohio, this might be changing.
Well, Laurie, you know, this is horrible to think about. It affects the muscles, it affects the lungs, it affects the heart, it affects the brain, it affects the smelling and the taste, right, your cognition. I mean, this is a horrible thing. How are we going to defend ourselves against this terrible coronavirus?
Well, yesterday, President Trump resumed 2 days ago, resumed the daily coronavirus briefings. And last night, he was talking about an interesting and grim statistic, which is nursing homes. And so this is something you've been talking about, Pat, for so long, which is a targeted approach to the coronavirus. Listen to this. The people in nursing homes make up 1% of the population, but nearly half of all coronavirus deaths. 1% of the population, almost 50% of the coronavirus deaths. So there's a great attention being paid to what's going on in nursing homes. They're giving them the PPEs, they're giving them the rapid tests, requiring them to report to the state if they have more than 3 cases, so the state can intervene. But we really need to pray for these people in nursing homes. They haven't had visitors for up to 6 months now, and they're so isolated. And I want to say to our viewers who are in nursing homes right now, we're praying for you. We love you. Seek the Lord Jesus. You will find him, and he can offer the comfort and the peace and even the joy that you require during this pandemic.
We have talked so much about the whole gut flora, but this metabolic syndrome, people who, you said the 80% or so of our immune system is in the gut.
Yes.
Talk to us about that thing. We have had so much interest in it, but this is the first line of defense against this terrible coronavirus.
Absolutely. You know, the median age of people who die of the coronavirus is 78. Why is that? It's because as we age, our immune system is not as robust as it was when we were younger. And what makes it even worse are these underlying conditions, such as diabetes, type 2 diabetes, obesity, heart disease, things like COPD and asthma, congestive heart failure. But one of the things that causes us to have a strong, robust immune system is our gut health. And so we need to do all we can, and we could go on for hours, you know that, about what makes a healthy gut. It's mostly diet and getting those good probiotics in there and avoiding things that are very harmful to the immune system and the gut, which are antibiotics. So if at all possible, try to avoid those. And then, of course, sugar and processed foods.
Yeah, and artificial sweeteners, we might add.
Right.
Don't forget. Well, Laurie, thank you for your insights. Folks, we've got to look after ourselves, and you know, it's in your hands. The government's not going to help you. They can do what they can, but you've got to look after yourself. And you need plenty of sleep. You need to take plenty of antibiotics, not antibiotics, but, you know, probiotics. And make sure that you don't get overweight and fat. And if there's a question of watching your diet, watch your diet and look after yourself, because the effects of this coronavirus are far, far more deadly than any of us had dared to dream when it first came out. It's not just a bad flu. It's not just a little cough. It is a major, major health threat to every one of us.